Tonight I would like to explore natural awareness. The last few times I came more from a progressive path view. And tonight I want to start a series of evenings coming more from a direct path view. So the direct path view says something like, heaven is now. It's just a matter of recognizing it. The progressive path view says, first you need to confess your sins and pay money to the church. And then if you are a good boy and a good girl, then at one point you will get there. That would be not a very sophisticated progressive path view. But you get the idea. So the progressive path view says, this is not it. Come on. I mean, it sucks. This can't be it. So what can you do to get there, whatever there is? And it makes sense, and there's a lot of beauty and healing in the progressive path view. The direct path view points to that which is already complete, which was never heard, which is, was, and will be in the nature of love. Undestructible, uncorruptible. The challenge here is that what I now this evening call natural awareness is undescribable. Still, I will make some words because I get a bit insecure when I just sit here and smile or not smile. Yeah. So that's why I will make some words. But my intention is not to give you something to think about. My intention would be to take everything away what is there to think about. So my intention is to take away pressure. It's not going to succeed because our mind is so skillful to pick up on anything, to put some more pressure, some more judgment into the present moment. But I try. So one way to be introduced to what is now I call natural awareness, don't bother about the name. The name doesn't matter. If this would be a group of Christians, I would say God. So one way to be introduced to the experience of natural awareness is what is called glimpse practices. When they happen in a more formal, ritualistic way, in the Tibetan tradition it's called pointing out instructions. So these are kind of images or sentences or even words or songs, poems, which opens something in us, which opens to something which is actually very familiar to us. Now, in the first meditation, we will start with a bit of progressive path methods. So a bit of focusing your attention. So I will invite you and guide you. And then I will play with, I don't know yet, but that's kind of my idea. I will play with two glimpse practices. And one is, I will invite you to connect with the situation where there was a glimpse of natural awareness. I will give you one example of that soon from my own experience. So for some people it's possible, it's not for everyone, but for some people it's possible through remembering a situation and kind of connecting on a felt sense in your body with that situation to kind of get to go back there. For some people that's not possible, but yes, so we will try different things. And then kind of bring that situation into this moment, the taste of that experience. I give you an example. It's a long time ago, so it doesn't matter, I can just tell that story. I was 16 years old. I hitchhiked with a friend from Germany through Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia still existed back then, to Istanbul, and then through Turkey to the east, close to the Syrian border. And there's a very big lake, Lake Van, or Van it's called. It's a huge lake. So we were backpacking, and so we came to the shore of this lake. There was nothing there. It was like just nature, and my friend he made the camp, and I took off my shoes and I went into the water, like just until here, just with the feet. And so I was standing there in this huge lake, and the sun was setting. It was summer, 16 years old. And then something happened, not dramatic. So it's difficult to describe, and whatever I say, it's not it. Yeah? But I just try to kind of give you an example of what kind of situation I mean. So what happened was a shift. It was not boom, but it was more like a sliding into a shift. You could say a shift of consciousness, or a shift of being. So what happened was that the sense of being in a central position dropped away. In other words, you could say, I forgot myself. And it was a bit like waking up from a trance. Like, so you are in a trance, and suddenly this trance lifts, and you realize, wow, so something else arises, like a different way, a different state of consciousness arises. It's kind of waking up from a trance. So the central position dropped away, my thoughts completely stopped. So there was no memory. Everything else stayed. So the sun setting, the vastness of the lake, my friend making a fire. So everything was still there, but I was missing. And there was a sense of complete freedom. Also, there was nobody there who could be free. And there was a sense of boundarylessness. And it was a vast landscape, with mountains in the background, and then that lake. There was a sense of, it's difficult to say, but it sounds like a cliche, but there was a sense that there was only everything. I almost said I was everything, but the I was not there, so I can't say I was everything. There was just everything. And there was no conflict. Everything was, and everything was in its right place. There was no urge arising within that to add something to this or to take something away. And actually, if an urge like that would have arisen, it wouldn't be mine urge. It would be just like a bird flying. There wouldn't be a difference between an urge arising and the bird flying. That would just be part of everything. What was, looking back then, what was amazing or surprising, it was not scary. There was not a sense that that everything is somehow predatory. It would be a little bit too much to say it was love, because a kind of love, a kind of all is well. There was no observer. The observed and the observing happened in the same place. It was not separate from each other. It was not like, wow, yeah, I'm the observer. No, the arising of that everything was also the awareness of it. And there was nobody there who was aware. So that's that kind of experience. So, and I notice, like now when I talk about it, then I kind of bring that into this moment for me. And I don't see the lake and the birds. I see people sitting here, but it's the same. It doesn't matter what arises, what that everything manifests as. It doesn't need to be particularly beautiful, but also you are very beautiful. but it seems sometimes that this, like that nature and vastness, like that kind of seems to be one of the conditions where sometimes people are supported into that shift, but there's no recipe. I mean, so there's no recipe. Nobody has figured out a recipe. If there would be one recipe, I would have found it, and I would just give it to you tonight. But there is no recipe. So, in this meditation, now I will invite you to go back to kind of a situation like that. If you don't find anything, then the breath is always there. So you take that as your focus, and then maybe some other words I say might invite you to just relax and stop the struggle or release the struggle with the present moment. So let's sit quietly for 20 minutes. I invite you first to adjust your posture a bit, so you feel relaxed as much as possible, particularly if you have this tendency to kind of sit a bit rigid and stiff, so then you back up a bit, so you become a bit softer. You let yourself be carried by the floor and by the chair. You can close your eyes if that feels good for you. If you keep your eyes open and you keep them relaxed without particular looking at something, like this soft open gaze, more looking at space rather than at what is there in space. And then you notice what happens when you pay more attention to the aliveness in your body, even down into your feet. And there's a sense of dropping into the body, from the head into the body. You notice what you bring with you into this moment, and you let it be okay. thoughts continue to arise, but they become less important. There's nothing you need to think about right now, nothing you need to understand. How is your belly? Your shoulders? And maybe it's possible with the out breaths to release some of the tension, some of the struggle, just a tiny little bit. Letting go of the control freak, of the self-improvement projects. And if you notice that you want to attain something or you want to get rid of something, that's fine. And if possible, you can relax that a little, like as if you open a fist. So you relax the grasping. Your awareness stays open, so you're aware of the people around you and this voice. But you're also aware of the sense of aliveness in your body, the breath, the inner weather. And then if you find yourself entangled in the stream of thinking, you gently find yourself dropping into the body and then open again. And then I invite you to go back into a moment in your life. Allow that kind of naturally to happen. So if you don't need to force, but if it's possible, you connect with a moment, maybe from childhood. Could be also a few days ago. Where for a moment the clouds opened and you notice the sky. This could be in nature, could be in a sacred place, could be in the presence of a master, could be in the eyes of your child, your dog, your lover. And without forcing you, slide into that experience. The miserable I dissolves like butter in the sun. And for a moment you forget who you are, where you are, what this is. And then gently you release those mental images, the memory, knowing that what opened back then is available to you in this moment. If you get confused, then you focus a bit on the felt sense of aliveness in the body. Forget yourself. Meditating with the heart like the sky. And whatever arises are birds, clouds, in the sky, including the miserable I. nothing to do, nowhere else to go, nothing to understand. Just this, not knowing what this is. Every movement is in the nature of peace. Every sound is in the nature of silence. And it's happening to nobody. The rain is falling. Thoughts are coming and going. Sensations in the body. And it's all it. Even the pain is it. Am I whole? How wonderful this moment happens by itself. This too. This too. there's only spirit. So one challenge here is that natural awareness is undescribable, unknowable. It is not an object of knowledge. Nobody understood this. No Buddha understood this. So, for those of you who are used to believe that the only thing which matters is what you know, what you understand, this would sound like nonsense to you. It is nonsense. So that's quite difficult. I mean, that does not mean that you are a lost case, but you, I mean, if somehow kind of there's a call in you to stay connected with this nonsense, you need to be prepared for a lot of struggle, because your mind will try to understand what I say. Your mind will try to make sense out of it. The conceptual mind. And some people need to do that for many, many years, like in koan practice, for example. So that's a glimpse practice in the Zen tradition. So you get these questions from the master, which are there's no answer to them. There's no answer coming from the conceptual mind. So your mind gets really like, and then at one point there's this. This is nothing. This is nothing to understand. It's such a relief. The other possible challenge is that glimpse practices they are glimpses. So it's like, so we sit and we do focused meditation on the breath, or visualization, or mantra, or loving kindness, or so whatever is wholesome for you, healing for you. And then you throw a glimpse practice into it. And that's also like searching the right glimpse practices coming from the right person. That's also, there needs to be a kind of connection. If the Dalai Lama would sit here, his glimpse practice would be much more fruitful than my baby glimpse practices. So it's also about the possibility of the relationship. So you start to seek which kinds of glimpse practices open the space for me, coming from which person. It can be the same glimpse practice from a different person, can have a completely different response in you. So it can happen that, like, I don't know, some of you have listened to me like for 10 years or something. And then suddenly you go to someone and he says exactly the same thing, and then you can, that is what Stephan meant. It's so simple, it's so close, how could I miss this? It was the same words. There is no trick. Nobody knows what is kind of the medicine for you. So it's like, and of course more grasping is there. I mean, the grasping in itself could be, at one point the grasping could be a bit of a problem. Of course, in the deepest sense, the grasping is no problem at all, because the grasping is also it. One thing is sure, we all will make it. We don't know when, but you can relax. The miserable eye has no rock to stand on. The miserable eye is made up. It's not going to win. And luckily, we have this wonderful progressive path books and methods. So the time we have, we can fill up with all this wonderful stuff. The intellectuals can be intellectual, the fun people can dance and sing. It's fantastic. You know? People who like to do body work, they do their body work, and it's wonderful. And there seems to be a tiny little bit correlation between the progressive path and the direct path. It seems to be. There is also the problem that people get kind of too stuck on the progressive path. Yeah, but usually, traditionally, also in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, the Bodhisattva path is kind of a mixture with different emphasis of the progressive path methods and the direct path methods. It's not a waste of time. Anyway, when this moment opens, it's horrible. When I say something, immediately I feel, no, I can't say it like this. But anyway, I just will continue. Just to fill up the time. Yeah. So when it opens, when you have a glimpse of that, then there is no sense that it was a waste of time to do 100,000 prostration. Of course, you know the 100,000 prostration didn't bring you closer to this. Because while you were doing the prostrations, you were already there. But there is not like, when the gap opens, then there's not then there's not the sense, wow, I should have spent time on Mallorca instead of doing 100,000 prostration. It's not like that. It is a problem when you are attached to the progressive path. Some people who are attached to the progressive path, they are for some time immune. Huh? No, immune. They are immune towards glimpse practices, because they have so much invested into the progressive path. So they would say, I do this for 30 years, and now you're saying it's all there, and it's just here for free, without any effort? Does this mean I wasted 30 years of my life? No. So sometimes a complete beginner, open, curious, is much more flexible and open to glimpse practices. This has nothing to do with the amount of years. Actually, my experience is that beginners are closer. I mean, the experts, they are far away, far out there. They will also get there, because, of course, no progressive path will bring you here. No progressive path. Because there is nobody walking on a progressive path. So the progressive path is a failed project. So at one point, they have to swallow their pride and take the transmission from the beginner. So I'm not putting down progressive path, obviously not, because that's my hobby. And I make my money with it. And there's all this wonderful books, and it's so fascinating and interesting, and wow, this is like so beautiful. So it's not that and of course, in the progressive path, on a relative level, there's healing. So you might, on a progressive path, unless you become a judgmental fundamentalist, but a genuine progressive path is meant to make you a person where people like to be around. So there's benefit in it. But it's not going to bring you closer to this. So my advice is play with a progressive path, work with something which feels joyful for you, healing, which fits your interests, your temperament. You have a sense of, I really enjoy, I enjoy to do that. It feels good, basically. It feels good. And also the stuff coming up, on a progressive path, also this, the stuff coming up, the difficulties, in that feels kind of good. Like, this is something I need to look at, to be with. So you do that. But also, keep open, be curious, keep on hanging around nonsense. And just take it in. So, like Dzogchen, Mahamudra, Advaita Vedanta, Christian mysticism, Zen, Sufism. It doesn't matter which tradition. So you just expose yourself to that field. Yeah? And in the Tibetan tradition, they say you walk through the mist until you're wet. And then suddenly you'll notice, I'm wet. When did that happen? I'm in a different place. I don't know how it happened, but I'm wet. Some of you might secretly hope for this kind of Eckhart Tolle, Byron Katie, boom! Yeah? Well, yeah, that's very rare. I wouldn't put my whole deck of cards onto that. I must admit, secretly I still... I still hope. But if I look back, for me it is really this walking through the mist and then, wow, what happened here? Something is different. A lot of the stuff, so we have a break soon, a lot of the stuff in the progressive path, you can learn on your own. No? So you can, of course it's good to get teachings and study and have a meditation practice. But this can happen only in relationship. The transmission of the direct path, that's at least at the moment my kind of temporary assumption. Yeah? And this is also what in the direct path traditions it is being said. It is something which arises in a relationship. It's not given to you because you already have it, but it is something which can be pointed out only in relationship, from heart to heart. That does not mean you like the guru. You don't need to lick the feet of the guru. So not like that. It can be between friends. It can be, it can be between, of course, one of the persons needs to have a genuine glimpse. And so you can't, I might be wrong. I mean, I'm wrong about everything, like you also. But mistaken, let's say, not wrong, mistaken. Yeah? I might be mistaken, but that is my sense. In the Tibetan tradition, they would say, yeah, there are these people, so they have like Eckhart Tolle or Byron Katie, but the Tibetans would say, yeah, that's because they have had that transmission in another life. And this is, of course, for many of us also a challenge, because some of us are so self-reliant because we have been hurt. We don't trust anybody. And with that comes a certain sense of arrogance, a certain sense of superiority. It's like, and that's really a defense, because there's, with that you will not be able to surrender, to give up control, to let another person really in, and trust that person. That does not mean that this person is a complete, fully enlightened Buddha and will never hurt you. Not like that. But trusting that transmission, trusting that goodness in that person from heart to heart. A person who has this attitude, I figure everything out by myself. The only person I can rely upon is myself. What I know, what I understand, what I think. That's the only thing I can trust. So that's a bit difficult. For Tibetans, it's like, to give a Tibetan a pointed out instruction is easy, because they trust. That does not mean that that person who gives you the pointing out instruction or this transmission needs to be a perfect person. After the transmission, this person might steal your money. Could happen. Because that person is still not fully ripened. So that's the last thing I say. I'm always surprised, in the end, how much I can talk about this. It just goes on and on and on. And all the time I'm talking about nothing. So so the tradition within this is most emphasized in Tibetan Buddhism is Dzogchen, the Great Perfection teachings, and Essence Mahamudra. So there are different kinds of Mahamudra. So Essence Mahamudra, which is pretty much the same. So what is said there is that glimpse practices, short moments repeated again and again until they become continuous. Short moments throughout the day, maybe starting with once an hour or maybe once a day. I mean, if you get into your life that once a day the clouds open for you for a second, you don't care anymore. No, it doesn't bother you anymore so much, the rain, because you know there's the sky and it will win because the clouds are adventitious. So short moments again and again. So what happens that, the gap, so the gap which opens in the glimpse practice, sometimes it's good to say it opens into nothing. But this is a very special nothing. Very special nothing. So everyone for whom that space opened does not come back from that experience and says, don't look there, there's nothing. No, they write poems, they build cathedrals, they found traditions, they defend that with their lives. That nothing. There was never ever a warning coming. So, in the Dzogchen tradition, these glimpse practices are completely sufficient. So, what happens with each glimpse into the nothing, that benefit, what is called the 5 wisdoms of the Buddha, they start to shine through. And they start to... So all the stuff you would, on a progressive path, want to develop, it's all there already. And through glimpse practice, it starts to kind of shine. Yeah? And so it's like... And so with each glimpse practice, which then with time last a little longer, go a little deeper, that these Buddha qualities, your natural intelligence, your natural love, ultimate bodhicitta, starts to more and more radiate. So that means that someone who has had glimpse practices, maybe even every day, even someone who has, there is this kind of state where it seems to close, but you still kind of, right now, for example, we all have a sense that there is the sky and that there is a possibility that tomorrow it will open. And if not, we just need to wait. So we are not losing the face into the sky, even if there's clouds for a few days. So similar, there can be someone who has that kind of experience, but still steals your money. Okay. Have a break, and then I will answer some questions after.